On the field, off the field, sports talk, entertainment, and more. This is Sauce on the Side.
Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 57 of the Sauce on the Side podcast. As always, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the producer, the man, Leighton, Dip Shaventone.
The Sox are the worst team in baseball. A whole lot happens in a week.
And joining us today, our guest host, Brandon B. Reich, the hot take detective, Riker.
I've learned one thing since moving to Nashville. Every day of the week can be a party.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Isn't the best part about Nashville? Isn't the best part about Nashville?
Rompers, boots, it's got it all.
And the wings.
Oh, yeah, the wings. And if you ask Leighton, it's the barbecue. Guys, be sure to listen on Spotify and iTunes. We're moving off of SoundCloud soon. Less than 2 weeks of that. Be sure to download, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. Be sure to check out thefsgn.com where you can find our podcast and other podcasts and different ways to watch and listen to podcasts they offer there. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Saucy Pod. Guys, we have an awesome show for you. Last week we had the college football preview show since we had games that kicked off this past weekend. But this is the weekend that the big dogs start to eat. And we will break down our highlighted week 1 matchups. We will talk about how the Nats became sellers at the waiver trade deadline and how they moved 2 very important bats into the NL Central race. We will break down the NFL preseason, put a bow on our fantasy breakdowns as we hit the top 10 defenses, and we will finalize our divisional breakdowns and hit the NFC and AFC South. Also, killer interview with Max Roshkoff. He will tell us about his career at NC State, how he knew that they would become a national powerhouse in wrestling, his time at the Eddie Bravo Invitational, and how he had such a quick rise in the sport of mixed martial arts. Guys, before we get to anything else, we'll go ahead and talk about how the Nats were big sellers at the waiver deadline. Daniel Murphy to the Cubs, Big City Matt Adams to the Cardinals. Guys, what do these moves say about the future of the Nationals?
Well, the future of the Nationals, they're about to go into a rebuild that I'm not sure what it's going to be, because the product could re-sign Bryce Harper. He'll probably leave, but they still have Trey Turner, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg. Even Rendon's a really serviceable player right now. So I'm not sure what can happen in Nationals, but it's interesting to see, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you. I mean, it has to be a rebuild, right? I mean, the Nats, this is really kind of strange because this is the move I thought they should make at the main trade deadline. But instead, they, moved Murphy and Matt Adams for pretty much nothing in return. I think they were hoping for a rebound in the second half of the season, and it's not going to be there. And I think we're probably all going to be in agreement that Bryce Harper's on the move. So they're left in a weird situation because, like you said, they have those pitchers. They have Trey Turner, Rendon. But, I mean, it looks like it's a rebuild for the Nationals.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's a definite rebuild, and I don't think Bryce Harper is going to want to be a part of that. I think it's almost one deadline too late because why would you not move Bryce Harper if you're going to move everything else? You could have got the King's ransom for him. You could have at least got something in return. Instead, he's probably going to walk in the offseason. And if that's the case, if you let the years of Bryce Harper just go to waste and you don't get anything in return for him, not even a championship, not even any prospects, that is a huge slap to the face for Nationals for the next few years. But these bats, they both go to the NL Central playoff race. Guys, what do these moves mean for the Cubs and the Cardinals?
Well, I mean, the Cubs haven't lost and they got Daniel Murphy, so I guess it means they're never going to lose again.
They probably won't.
There's a good chance.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs got a great bat in a stretch when, he was on here last week with Diesel's Doghouse. The Cubs' offense has been abysmal. But now they get finally a leadoff hitter, they get a slugging boost, and now Madden has so many options for his lineup when Bryant comes back. I mean, you have Addison Russell, who hits 286 versus 250 with left-handed pitching, and then so you can move him and Murphy out. You got Bodie, you got Bryant, you got Schwartz, Happ. I love the direction. And for the Cardinals, I mean, this just gives them a great power hitter versus right-handed pitching when it comes to that playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just some of the crazy stats that I found comparison, Addison Russell and Daniel Murphy, because I feel like in this trade, those two guys are going to be competing for swings. You look at Daniel Murphy in his 61 games this year. He already had 66 hits, 10 doubles, 8 home runs, and 34 RBIs, where Addison Russell in 112 games, which, is nearly double of what Murphy has. He only has 3 more RBIs. He has less home runs, and he does have twice the amount of doubles, but he only has 99 hits. I mean, for a guy who's hitting 259 this year, and that's a career high for him, and a 326 on base percentage, which is also a career high. Daniel Murphy, a career 300 hitter, is an absolute upgrade at the position in the lineup as far as hitting goes. Whenever you move Javi to short, Cubs are 5-0 since they've got him. 7 runs per game. For a team that Diesel had talked about last week, was struggling at the plate, and since the All-Star break was in the bottom half of almost every hitting statistic in baseball. So I think the Cubs got a steal. Big City, like you said, B-Reich, right-handed pitchers, he eats them alive, and a good situational bat in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I think both of these teams took huge step forwards at the waiver deadline, and it's going to be interesting how things play out for the NL Central race.
If you look at Addison Russell, I mean, against left-handed pitching, he actually hits pretty well. He's 286 and only hits 250 versus righties. His OPS is 780 versus 652. So, maybe we limit his at-bats and use him more as a defensive replacement and just had him go against lefties. I think that's the best way to, go moving forward.
Yeah, I actually love that. Late in innings, if you get a lead, you take Daniel Murphy, you pop him on the bench, and then move Baez over to second because he can make that defensive transition like nobody else. And then Addison Russell jumps right in there to help bolster the defense in late innings. So we actually have another race that is actually heating up this week. Maybe the 3 most important games in the MLB are starting tonight. And it's going to be the A's as they travel to Houston for a 3-game set. Guys, how do we think this series will shape up? And will we have a new AL West leader by next show?
Well, I love the Athletics right now. They're 16-6 in August. Best team ERA since the All-Star break, which just blows my mind because their starting pitching is a bunch of no-names, really.
Well, Edwin Jackson, he was a pretty big name at one point.
He was an inning eater, they said. So, but I think Houston will grab 2 of these games and extend their slim lead. I just really have a hard time thinking the Athletics are going to get a clean sweep, and that's the only way they're going to get the division lead coming out of this. But big series. Looking forward to it.
I mean, yeah, I'm thinking the Nationals. The Astros in this series definitely. It's at Houston, so they're really good at home. I'm going to vote the Astros, and I think they could sweep this series. I don't think they will, but Sean Manaea won the deal yesterday. He's not throwing for him. Oakland, so that'd be a hit. But I'm taking the Astros in this series.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going with the Astros. I feel like the Athletics are looking at this like it's their playoffs in this series because you look at Brett Anderson, who's been one of their hottest pitchers, 2 earned runs in his last 26 and 2/3 innings, and they pushed his start back so he could go against Garrett Cole tonight. And I really like that move by the Athletics, and it shows that they're kind of all in on winning this series. They moved his start back from yesterday. They were still able to pick up the win over the Twins, and the Astros they were 8-1 against Oakland up until July. Since July hit, they're 2-5. So I think the Athletics are actually going to be able to sneak out 2 of these games, especially since they're going to be going against Charlie Morton and Keuchel, 2 guys that they had just seen in the last series. And, if you see a guy multiple times in a short stretch like this, I think they're going to be able to jump on those 2. And I'll be surprised if the Athletics actually lose 2 games to the Stros in this set.
Oh, so you say you'd be pretty shocked if the Astros lose 2 games to the Athletics?
Yes, I would not be surprised if the Athletics win 2 or maybe even 3 of these games.
Wow, that's a pretty outrageous thought there for us. You got any more thoughts for us?
Yes, actually I do.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine.
Roberto Ozuna, took it upon himself to intentionally throw at my boy Shohei Ohtani. Initially, I wanted to call him a sissy for the move, but then I was actually relieved that he's only hitting people his own size now. We'll stay on the subject of shitty people that really don't see an issue with hitting women and give a big 2 thumbs down to Ohio State. Aaron Hernandez, Riley Cooper, and Zach Smith, their mentor, Urban Meyer. You know what the difference is in the eyes of the NCAA between enabling domestic violence as a coach and selling your memorabilia as a player? One game. If you don't believe me, ask Google about Todd Gurley and his 4-game suspension. Buckeye fans, remember when Jim Tressel was fired for his players trading their own memorabilia that they owned for tattoos? Yeah, so do I. Want to know why Urban Meyer kept his job and Art Briles didn't? 3 national titles. You think Urban Meyer gives his players the same guilty by association speech that every coach gives their kids on day 1 of practice? If he didn't give it to him this year, I bet he had an assistant coach do it. Maybe Zach Smith got to give it this year. I just know that an upstanding educational institution like Ohio State University would make sure that their players got the right example. We'll go ahead and transition now from a bad guy to just a bad coach. Hugh Jackson lives by the preseason motto, you don't get to play unless you're in trouble or you're injured. Hugh Jackson, 10 out of 10 chance that he would have put Kiko Alonso back in the game. Kiko Alonso. I think I'd want out of Miami too if your 2 biggest free agent signings in the last 2 years were Jay Cutler and Frank Gore. But if you're going to go anywhere, don't go join Joe Flacco. Eric Decker thought playing for the Patriots was so fun that he had to retire. And there's a new movie out this week, and it's titled How the Cubby Killer and the Cubs Can Coexist, starring Daniel Murphy and written by Theo Epstein. And those have been my thoughts. So guys, I talked a little bit about it, but Hugh Jackson decides to go ahead and take Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod Taylor, whichever you prefer. We know which one Tyrod prefers, though. Decides to put him back in the game after he comes out with an injury in the preseason. What do we make of this move by Hugh Jackson?
I mean, the situation was probably that just Tyrod wanted to go back into the game because he's a competitor and he's trying to beat out Baker. But, like, I don't care if my starting quarterback is on his knees begging on national television. He's not going back in the preseason game. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I think this is just further situation where Hugh Jackson just doesn't understand how the game of football works.
No, I thought the guy couldn't get any less competent after his 1-31 record as a head coach in the last 2 seasons. But then I saw this, and this just takes the cake. I mean, you have a guy who you are expecting to be the starting quarterback week 1. You came out 3-4 weeks ago, almost immediately after you drafted Baker, actually, and said Baker was the 3rd string and Tyrod was going to be your starter, and there was really not going to be any competition going into week 1. And you take the guy who's injured, who's supposed to be your starting quarterback, and throw him back out there. I don't care how much he's playing. I don't care how much the injury is really not an issue. You don't put him back out there, because if he comes out of the game, obviously there's something wrong, and you need to reevaluate it later. It's a preseason football game. There's a reason why this guy wins almost all of his preseason games, then cannot win a game in the playoffs. It's because, hey, you are doing the preseason wrong. The preseason is about evaluating talent and just giving guys a little bit of extra reps, and this is an absolute terrible call by Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, I'm especially sad for this week's Hard Knocks to see the Hard Knocks behind the scene of the going back in for Tyrod. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah,
I mean, supposedly he dislocated a finger and had a pretty nasty bruise on his wrist. I mean, just why? Well, why risk anything? I mean, I understand he would probably go back in the game in a real game, but it's an exhibition.
Man, you play to win the game.
Yeah, you know what? He was actually the most football guy that we know. That's the issue.
Hugh Jackson's full of shit.
No, dude, he's a football guy.
Yeah,
That's what football
absolutely.
guys do.
We're going to win every preseason. We're going to win every single preseason game, no matter what. We'll have guys out there with concussions. He would have threw Kiko Alonso back.
Oh, yeah, he would.
No doubt in my mind. He said, Kiko, go block this kick. So, guys, there were actually other coaches in the NFL, more respected coaches at that, with Matt Nagy, Sean McVay, and Mike McCarthy. I'm sure that there were more. They decided that week 3 of the preseason wasn't necessarily a dress rehearsal like it's been treated in the past, and decided to rest the majority of their starters and kind of get a look at the lower level talent and see if any of these guys are going to be competent enough to make the NFL. Do you guys like this strategy?
I understand it from the view like the Rams and the Packers because of how good the top guys were last year, and the Packers, Aaron Rodgers been the best quarterback on the planet for several years now. I can see why they thought they wouldn't need to play them in the preseason game, but the Bears, Mr. Trubisky, you can't tell me he doesn't need extra reps. Got Allen Robinson, who tore his ACL last year. All the other younger players in the Bears system who do need more reps. Like, you don't want to get Jordan Howard more reps coming out of the backfield catching passes in real games. Like, that's not something you don't want to do. No, you want them out there. So I don't know why the Bears... I heard the Bears should have done it. I understand why they did not, but if I were the Bears, I definitely would have played them more.
See, I'm on the opposite side there. I think I like what the Bears are doing because obviously if they draft Mitch Trubisky second overall, even trade up to get him, they're honestly competent. They think that he's a competent quarterback and he's the future moving forward. You would rather have him go out there and get his reps during the regular season and practice than throw him out there in a preseason game and get hurt. I know for myself, we in our league, we always preach that we're going to do the draft the week after week 3 of the preseason because guys always get hurt week 3 of the preseason because they're actually out there, full pads. They're playing basically a real NFL game in that week 3, and starters are out there for a prolonged period of time, which just increases the risk of injury. And basically everybody across the board waits till after week 3 of the preseason to do their fantasy drafts because guys get hurt all the time. It's just like any other week in the NFL. The only exception is that it really doesn't matter for anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lean more towards, siding with these coaches because, to me, like you guys have been saying, the preseason is for 2 reasons. 1, rookies and borderline talent to get plenty of reps to see if they're good enough to make the squad. Number 2, let the starters just get a few reps just to wear off some of that rust. I do understand what you're saying, Layden, with I probably would have played Mitch Trubisky a little bit more, but at the end of the day, there's just way too many injuries that take place in pointless games. It's not worth it.
Unless you're Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, unless you're Hugh Jackson. Then you just take the injured guys and play them. So week 4, basically just guys fighting for a roster spot. We really don't see much of the actual starters. So I would basically put a bow on the top-level guys for the preseason here. Anything catch your eye this preseason? Any player, coach, or unit?
Yeah, I just got 2 players. One is Christian McCaffrey. He really looks like, he's expanded his role, and he's probably going to run the ball a little bit more this season. I mean, he's always going to be predominantly the pass catcher, but, he take away that 71-yard run he had in week 2, he's still averaging north of 4 yards per carry, which is a lot better than he'd had in his rookie season. And then special shout-out to Adrian Peterson, only needing 1 preseason game to win the starting job for the Redskins.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, I think his body of work definitely goes to play there. Adrian Peterson was one of the guys I actually written down. 11 carries for 56 yards. He looked like the old school all-day AP that we know and love. And then a unit that impressed me was the Minnesota defense. That first quarter is whenever you get to see a lot of the starters play. Minnesota hasn't given up a single point in the preseason first quarter this year. And the Arizona Cardinals. Steve Wilks came in, and he basically said, we're going to not be this offensive powerhouse team. We're basically going to run the ball, protect the ball, and we're going to go out there and stop you on defense and cause havoc and get turnovers. So far it's worked. 13 sacks in 3 games, 6 interceptions. They've been as impressive as any defensive unit out there so far. I know that it's a lot of the inexperienced guys and younger guys, but it does show that Steve Wilks can coach on the defensive side of the ball, so I'm very impressed by that.
Yeah, mine, I look in today at the stats for the rookie quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson actually had the second most passing yards and the most touchdowns. It's only 1 interception. And he has 111 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's progressing way better than anybody thought he would. Because that first game, he was an absolute train wreck, like a total project. Came along pretty nicely for him. And the second one I want to talk about are the Cleveland Browns. So you guys know I watch Hard Knocks every week, and this past week, I'll talk about this again later, but they had a fight on the show. And then I started thinking about it. And
Imagine that, a great, well-ran organization like the Browns having a fight in their camp.
And I started then I started thinking about the whole show, as a whole so far, and these players talk a lot of shit. They talk a lot of shit for winning one game last season, and one game over the past 2 seasons. Took a lot of shit for it, and a lot of it's from Jarvis Landry, a newer guy who he knows he's good, and that's become infectious amongst the whole team. So earlier this season, I said they could win 3 games. I think they win 3 games still, but I could see them winning way more than that because
Cocky.
the most recent team like that was the Seahawks. Going into that season where the defense just became fucking unreal, no one was talking. They talked a lot of shit. That team fought on the sidelines during games. They fought in practice.
Yeah, look at the Jaguars last year too.
Yeah, they fought in practice and shit, and the Jaguars too. The difference between those 2 teams and the Browns teams, no one's talking about how those 2 teams were supposed to be really good on defense or really good. Period. Everybody's talking about the Browns team. So the Browns have potential right now that they could still suck. And this is overconfidence from the media and everybody saying that the team's going to bounce back. I don't think it will happen, but this team could be an absolute mess during the regular season. And this could be a train wreck.
Yeah, I think whenever your head coach is your 4th or 5th best coach on your whole entire unit, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. You look at Todd Haley, who I said is basically they hired him as the coach in waiting until Hugh Jackson started losing games again. I just think that the difference between the Seahawks and the Jaguars and the Browns is a competent head coach. So I'm not going to buy into the Browns until really there's a change of hand at the coaching position.
Yeah, and I was going to say this later, but speaking of Hugh Jackson, he is so full of shit.
Oh yeah.
You have to be able to hold a job after 2 years of one win.
You got to be good at
I'm convinced that anything he says on Hard Knocks is just for the camera. I'm so confident in that. Whenever Jeff Fisher came on there and said, I'm not going fucking 8-8, you could tell he actually meant that. That was actually him saying he's not going fucking 8-8. That's him show for the camera. And when you see, Greg Williams cuss at the entire defense, that's fucking real. Whenever you see Todd Haley cuss at Greg Williams for hitting the quarterback in practice, that's real. That's why they are better head coach candidates than Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson's a fucking joke.
Yeah, he is. I cannot believe it. He is the only guy I know in the world that would be able to retain a job after, going 1-31 in the NFL. I mean, it's unreal.
He puts on a good show.
That's important. That is important, especially if you're going to be on Hard Knocks. So, guys, we'll go ahead and transition, and we'll play a little darts here. So,
Pew, 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 pew.
we're playing darts, baby. In case you guys don't know, this is the staple of the show. This is basically our time to, more often than not, we step away from sports. Over the past couple weeks, since, the sports world is a little slow, we've been diving into a new thing with this. So the way that darts works is each one of us will throw a dart at the dartboard, and each number on the dartboard represents something. And this week we're going to continue with what we've been doing lately, and that is cross sports trading. So we'll throw a dart, it hits a number, and then we'll talk about whether or not we would do a trade for their respective cities and trade one player from one sport to this another city for a player in another sport. So, Leighton, producer, your throw.
We have a 19. A 19. T.Y. Hilton for Jason Tatum. So T.Y. Hilton goes to the Patriots. Jason Tatum goes to the Pacers. Ooh. Interesting. That's tough. I would not do it because I view Jason Tatum as just way more valuable with peace to the Celtics than T.Y. would be to the Patriots. And I don't think Boston can give up Jason Tatum, who's 20 years old and dominated the league or at least to some extent dominated the league last year.
I mean, that's fair, but that T.Y. Hilton would just absolutely eat in that Patriots system.
T.Y. Hilton would be the perfect guy for Tom Brady. And if they got him, they would absolutely win the Super Bowl. But you're going to be giving up Jason Tatum, who is an absolute stud in the future of the Celtics, who's a really young team, who I think, in all respects to the rest of the NBA, is going to be the only team who, with the exception of the 76ers, is going to have all their pieces remaining whenever the Warriors finally disband. So I don't think that they would do it, just for the simple fact for the city of Boston. I mean, they could possibly win the Super Bowl with or without T.Y. Hilton.
Right.
And if you give up Jason Tatum, that Celtics team is going to be set back a ton. It makes a lot of sense for the city of Indianapolis, but no sense for the Patriots or the Celtics.
It makes a ton of sense for the Pacers to do it. But yeah, like you said, I go back and forth because the Celtics would be a lot thinner, but they'd still have Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward coming back. But yeah, I just don't think you can give up Jason Tatum, who was, probably third on the Rookie of the Year, and most years would have won the Rookie of the Year in the NBA. So yeah, I will not do it.
Okay, so we're all in agreement not doing this trade?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, so B-Reich, your throw.
We have a 16. David Johnson, Justin Verlander. So David Johnson goes to the Texans, and Verlander goes to the Diamondbacks.
Oh, man, this is actually really interesting.
It is interesting because the Diamondbacks already have a great pitching staff, and this kind of puts them, that much closer to the top and probably pushes them, I don't know, maybe damn near NL favorites, in my opinion, right there, with how shitty the Cubs are playing.
Not since we got Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy was our savior.
Yeah, that fixes all our pitching problems, too. I just don't see I guess David Johnson going to Houston. I think I'd do it. I think I'd go ahead and do it. I think you get Lamar Miller out of town. Dante Foreman's on the pup list. You have David Johnson, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins. Probably pretty good defense. I think both teams could become title contenders instantly with that. I'd do it.
Yeah, I think I would absolutely do it. So for Houston, you're going to lose, obviously, Verlander, but your pitching staff's pretty good as it is.
Right.
And I think last year Verlander was the difference between winning a title and not winning a title, but I don't think that he's the same thing for this team this year. I think that they have more problems. I don't look at them as a team that's going to win the AL. But if you take in David Johnson, who is right up there with one of the three most versatile backs in the NFL, you put him right behind Deshaun Watson, who's extremely versatile himself, and that would make for a very, very interesting offensive group with a defensive group that, if they're healthy, they're going to be really good as well. I think that would make the Texans extremely scary this year, give them a potential to win a title with, if Verlander gets chopped off, they're still going to, the Astros are still going to be pretty good, flirt with the title. And for Arizona, that opens up a lot for them. I think that would make them the NL favorites. They would have by far the best pitching staff in the NL if they don't already have it. And David Johnson, it's not like they're going to win a title in the next couple of years with him. So I think it makes sense for both cities.
Whoa, slow down, though. Leighton already said that the Red Sox are the worst, so the Astros have a really good chance of winning the AL now. The Red Sox suck now.
They have an impeccable chance of winning. Almost locked to win the AL. The Red Sox suck.
If the Red Sox can't even beat the Rays in one game, they sure as hell can't beat the Astros.
No.
Well, the Red Sox need to stop wearing those damn jerseys.
They're 0-6 in those things. 0-6. We never won. But yeah, no, do for both sides, because the Cardinals, they're probably going to not be that great with David Johnson. Might as well just be not that good without him. And, just letting help you win the National League. And Texans, Lamar Miller sucks. And Houston already had good pitching staff without Verlander. So yeah, for both.
Yeah, I feel like David Johnson would be the guy that they've always hoped Lamar Miller would be.
Yeah, I was just about to say he's a much, much better Lamar Miller.
I will say that I'd be able to this whole Lamar Miller sucks campaign.
Hey, I loved him for like four weeks. I think it was like 2 seasons ago when he actually did pop off.
I mean, I'm sure his ADP still in the 5th round, so
Yep.
He'll still get drafted.
Oh, Lamar Miller is always going to get drafted way too high in fantasy leagues. He has his whole career. So we are in agreement. We are going to send Justin Verlander to the Diamondbacks and David Johnson to the Astros. My throw.
We have a 2. Kyrie Irving for J.J. Watt. Kyrie Irving goes to the Rockets. J.J. Watt goes to the Patriots.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I think that if I'm both teams, I would highly, highly consider doing this because J.J. Watt, he's been hurt the last few years, but we're just going to assume in these kind of trades that everybody's going to be healthy. You put him with a great coach like Bill Belichick, he's going to pop off even more than what he did under the Bill O'Brien set down there with the Texans because I think Bill O'Brien's not that great of a coach, and he was still able to get a ton of production to J.J. Watt just because he's so good. And Kyrie Irving, there's no guarantee that he's going to re-sign with the Celtics. Plus, they have Terry Rozier, who's extremely valuable in the postseason last year. I mean, they were one game away from going to the NBA title game without Kyrie. This year, they're going to get Gordon Hayward. Now LeBron's out of there. Kyrie's a very good player, but I don't know. He might be the only exception of the players that might not be able to withstand the Warriors' dominance and stay in Boston. Just because I don't know why, but I've always kind of labeled as Kyrie as like this selfish guy who is going to kind of go anywhere as long as he can put up big numbers. And I don't think he's going to stay in Boston whenever his time's ready. So I would definitely do this trade.
If I'm Boston, I'll do this trade for everything you just said. But if I'm Houston, I'm not doing this trade because there's not enough air in a basketball to have Kyrie, James Harden, and Chris Paul all on the same team. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. Earlier, I said the Browns might be a train wreck. The Rockets would be a train wreck.
Yes, they
And
would.
then you have J.J. Watt, who's like freaking the best human being to ever walk the face of the earth on your team. If he's healthy, he's the best defensive player in football still. So, no. For Houston, definitely not for Houston. No.
But Houston would have three players who could just straight up cross over
They could get-
anybody.
they could
They
get
would be
buckets.
cooking everybody.
Dude,
They
that
would
would
get
be-
buckets in a hurry.
That'd be a great deal
Daryl
on third
Morey
team.
would be losing his mind if he was able to pull that off. He would love that. Just a bunch of guys that can shoot and all of them handle the ball. I think it'd be awesome because this
They
time
could
last year
all-
we were sitting there talking about how Chris Paul and James Harden would be a train wreck. Now you just add in another guy who can do
I think
the
there's a
same thing
limit,
as
though.
him.
I think there's a limit.
No. 5
Because
wide,
their
baby.
tallest guy
5
is
wide.
now 6'4", and they're starting in their backcourt. I don't know. That'd be a struggle. That's
definitely
James
not.
Harden's their tallest one. Then I could see that working, but I don't think. Yeah,
D'Antoni would love it.
D'Antoni would
He would
absolutely
love it, but no.
But he would have more dribble drive guys, but then you'd have less people around the perimeter ready to shoot. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. And honestly, if you send over, yeah, no, I just wouldn't do it. No way. Not enough there in
Nice.
this world. And Kyrie wouldn't just go anywhere, Drake. He thinks the world's flat. He doesn't go too far.
That's true. He's afraid he might fall off.
He won't go to China from the Pacific.
No,
He goes all the way around.
That's just not safe.
That's just not safe.
That is funny. But, dude, D'Antoni would absolutely love this. I'm pretty sure if you could just get him 5 point guards, he would be completely complacent and just try to outscore you. And I would just like to watch it. I just want to watch it. So we are not sending Kyrie to Houston for J.J. Watt,
Yeah.
No.
unfortunately. I was outvoted. So, Leighton, go ahead and give us a review on what we decided for darts.
We are not sending T-Bot to the Patriots for Jason Tatum to go to the Pacers. Now is unanimous. We are sending David Johnson to the Texans and Verlander to the Diamondbacks. That was unanimous. And Drake got outvoted 2-1 to not send Kyrie to the Rockets and not send Watt to the Patriots.
What a bummer. I just want to see D'Antoni get 5 point guards and see what he can do. So, guys, we did the college football preview last week. This week, I said it, the big dogs are eating. We get four ranked matchups this week. And we'll go ahead and we'll break down who we think is going to win each one of these. So we'll start off hot. A top 10 matchup between Washington and Auburn. The game's actually going to be in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Dome. And Chick-fil-A will actually be open for this game since it'll be on a Saturday. Guys, I have Washington winning it all. But who do you guys have winning this game? By the way, Auburn is a 1.5 point favorite.
Last week, whenever I was doing my research for the college football preview, one person said that Auburn's defense is almost Alabama-like. We'll have to see if it is Alabama-like because Chris Peterson's going to have his team ready for this game. Jake Browning, you probably have to get him at this point in his career. Like, he's probably wakes up on Monday when they play on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's like a 14-year vet at Washington at this point.
He's always been there.
Yeah, I didn't realize last year the Auburn's quarterback, though, Jason Stidham, had 3,100 yards and 18 touchdowns.
No, Jared Sims actually back this year. Too.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had that many yards.
He tore it up at the end of the year.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had that many yards. So I'm going to take Washington in this game, though. I just think Chris Peterson's a much better coach and Big Fan a better quarterback. But the fear is if Auburn can get up by maybe 14 or 17 points early, I don't know what you think can come back from that kind of deficit in this game.
Well, I thought I was going to be the odd man out choosing Washington, but I'm choosing them as well. Washington actually had a great D last year. I believe it was 7th in the NCAA.
I think they were actually top 5 or 6.
They were for a while. You never know. But they did lose that guy in the first round. What, Vita Vea or something like that?
Vita Vea,
Yeah, so that's going to be tough. And Auburn, I'm pretty sure, lost nothing on the defensive side of the ball. And they were pretty good in their own right. I do think it's going to be a tough one, but I think you got 2 good defenses. You got 2 decent quarterbacks coming back. Both could be in the Heisman talking in the season. But I'm going to choose Washington, a close one, maybe like a 21-14 game.
Yeah, it's going to be a super close game, in my opinion. I think it's going to come down to a defense. And I do give Chris Peterson, I do give Jake Browning the edge on offense. They return Jake Browning, obviously, and they have a running back that was able to get 1,600 all-purpose yards last year. And on the defensive side of the ball, we know that they lost Vita Vea, but they still are able to return their 2 top sack leaders from last year. So it's not like they're going to have a huge absence of Vita Vea. I think this team is loaded. I think that they might be the best team in the country. We will see. This opening game will be a big test. I'm going to take Washington in a really pretty low-scoring game. I think it's going to be like 23-20, and I just think that the Washington defense is going to come out and surprise Auburn, who, anytime Auburn goes outside of the SEC, they really don't get smacked in the mouth, and I think Washington's going to be the team that sneaks up on them and does it.
Okay, and we actually have another top 15 matchup. We have number 14 Michigan heading on the road to go play at number 12 Notre Dame. Notre Dame opens as a -1 favorite, so this game is basically a toss-up in the eyes of the bettors. Who do you guys see winning this game?
Well, I think it's going to be Michigan. I think Michigan was a team talented enough last season to make the college football playoffs. They just had terrible quarterback play all season long. And I think Shea Patterson should be at least a steady presence back there. And I think Michigan's defense is always there. So I definitely see Michigan winning this game.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Last season we talked about how Michigan is a super young team. And they still did okay last year. I think they're taking another step this year. And I really just love Jim Harbaugh. I'm cheering him really hard. I'm picking Michigan in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm actually going with Michigan as well. I really like Michigan this year because there was a guy who went in and found out how much production each team had lost coming into this season. He had Michigan at number 11 of returning talent, and I had said last year I picked Michigan to win the Big Ten. I just said the only problem was that they were going to be super young. Well, that super young team is now a year older, and they have a legitimate quarterback in Shea Patterson. Diesel came on the show last week and talked about how he thought Shea Patterson could be a Heisman candidate. I don't think Shea Patterson even has to play at the level of a Heisman candidate yet in order for them to win this game. As long as he's a competent quarterback, which I 100% agree with, I think that he could even be a Heisman candidate to back Diesel up on that. But he doesn't have to play at that level in order for them to win this game. And, first game in the offense, I don't think he will play to that talent, but I think he'll play good enough. And, you're looking at this Michigan team who the skill players are unbelievable. And you add that with a competent quarterback in Patterson, I think that Michigan has the potential to go into Notre Dame and actually blow the doors off of them. We saw Notre Dame last year get the doors blown off of them by Miami. I think that this game has the potential to be the same. So we'll actually go to another top 25 matchup, and it'll be on Sunday. Game will actually be played in Jerryland in Dallas. Hopefully we actually have some conflicting winner in this game, but it's number 8 Miami taking on Ed Orgeron and the boys, ranked 25 in LSU. LSU is a 3-point dog. Guys, who do we think is going to win this game on Sunday? And isn't this a treat? Not all these games are jam-packed, but we get 2 on one day, 1 on another day, and then 1 on Monday. So this is awesome. It's awesome. I love that it's on Sunday. Who do you guys have winning this?
I'm just going to take Miami, and my reasoning, pretty simple, is just, the experience they have. We saw a team take a big step forward last season. A lot of times, after a team take a big step forward one season, most of the guys back, they're taking a bigger step forward. I think it's going to happen to my team this year. I think it'll be a really, really good team. And I think just LSU's offense still kind of coming along. I'm interested for Ed Orgeron, but Miami's defense, the way it is, and the offense for LSU, maybe not there. I'm going to take Miami in this one. I think it'll be close. Maybe, one touchdown, maybe touchdown field goal game, but close, but Miami.
I mean, I'm with you there. I'm picking Miami too, and once again, this comes down to the quarterback play. Rozier's coming back. He had a pretty good, solid season last year. I expect that to continue. And like Layton hinted at, LSU always kind of struggles at moving the ball. And, they have a new transfer quarterback coming in from Ohio State, Burrow. I think that's going to take a second for that O to click. I think that LSU will keep the game close. I think if this game happened later in the year, I think LSU has a chance to be a pretty good team. But this early in the season, I'm picking Miami.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Miami too. I have LSU winning their side of the SEC. I think that this is going to be the game that gets Ed Orgeron fired up and gets these guys moving in the right direction. I don't think a loss this early in the season is going to kill LSU, so I think it could possibly be a good thing. I think Miami, basically it's just the same team from last year, and they have a bad taste in their mouth losing their last 3 games, which you look at LSU, who actually finished the season pretty decent, and they were kind of a turnaround team ever since that loss to Troy. I think this is going to be kind of like that Troy loss, where they kind of let the game get away from them early, and they'll claw back into it and make it close. But I don't think that they're going to be able to beat Miami. I think it's going to be Miami early, and then LSU too little too late in the second half. But I think this is going to be an awesome, awesome game to watch. So we'll go to Miami. And so far we're 3-0 on all picking the same team. So on Monday, we won't really be able to touch on it because we'll be recording during the show, so we'll go ahead and preview it for this week. Virginia Tech, ranked 20th, actually heading to Florida State. Florida State is a -7.5 favorite, so pretty big favorite there. Guys, who do we see winning this game?
Well, before I start, something that's really crazy about this matchup?
What's that?
What is that?
They're both in the ACC, and this is the first time they've played since 2008.
That doesn't even seem right.
10 years ago. That's what it said. But,
Who won
FSU,
last game? Do you know?
I'm not for sure. To
Okay,
be
so
totally honest with you.
They can't ride the hot hand and the momentum then, huh?
Right, exactly. So FSU, they're reloading. They have Francois back, if that's how you even say his last name. I think they just really messed up last year with him going down that first game of the year. This one was a complete toss-up to me, though, honestly, because Virginia Tech, 13th best D last year. They're going to be reloading back. But I'm just going with Francois, and I like picking the quarterbacks that I know can get the job done. So I'm going with FSU.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this game because this is, the first game without Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. And how will Francois respond to that? Francois, we've seen him a couple of seasons, comes at the first game after he tears the team he's playing apart. It'll probably happen again this season, and then our friend Wyatt will tell us how good he is, and then FSU will fall into a grave, basically, and be abysmal.
See, I'm actually going to I'm going to base it off the quarterback, but I'm going to go with the other team. I really like Josh Jackson. Last year as a freshman, he was a stud. And if you guys remember back to whenever they played Clemson, Virginia Tech was the number 12 team in the country. They were undefeated. They were looking good. They were down 14 in the fourth quarter, looking like they were actually going to come back in this game. And then they got pick six. They actually outgained Clemson, which is super impressive and hard to do. And the 3 turnovers in that game to Clemson 0 was basically the nail in the coffin for Virginia Tech. And they actually lost 3 games last year to ranked teams, and their turnover ratio was 9-3. So I don't think that that's going to be the same now that they have Josh Jackson a year older, a little bit more mature. And you look at Francois. I was never a really big fan of Francois. I thought he was really talented with his legs, but that was about as far as that went. I thought he was a bad decision maker in the pocket. I didn't think he was that skilled throwing the ball. and I never thought that he looked that phenomenal. But you know, you have a lot of people who are high on this guy, and Jimbo Fisher, as good as a head coach as he is, especially with the quarterback position. I mean, he had countless guys getting drafted in the first round for Florida State, a great quarterback coach, and now Jimbo's not there. I think they're going to regress in the aspect of the quarterback. I know that Virginia Tech did lose talent on the defense. They lost the Edmonds twins. But I think this is going to be a defense that is still good again this year. And you couple that with Josh Jackson not turning the ball over, I think that this team is going to be super deadly this year. I really like them. I don't think they have enough firepower to win the ACC, but I sure like them to beat Florida State this weekend. And I think this is actually going to be another really good game. This slate of 4 games, you couldn't pick 4 better games to kick off the season with. So, guys, we're going to go ahead and transition and get to our interview. We have a really interesting guy. It's Max Roshkoff. He's been successful at the NCAA wrestling level. He's been successful in jiu-jitsu. Now he's transformed his talents to take him into mixed martial arts, and he's actually fighting for Legacy Fighting Association. So, guys, really hope you enjoy this interview. So, Dippers, today we have a very special and very interesting guest. Former NC State wrestling standout turned jiu-jitsu monster, now one of the newest members of the Legacy Fighting Alliance, Max Roshkoff. Welcome to the kennel.
Hey, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
So after an extremely successful high school career, which included a top 12 finish at Flow Nationals, you decided to go to a program that at the time was a very middle-of-the-pack program in NC State with a new and up-and-coming coach and Pat Popolizio. You were really a part of that young class that helped propel NC State into a national powerhouse. You know, at what point did you realize that Popolizio had something special brewing at NC State?
So first, my best friend Jacob Casper, he was Duke's heavyweight the last 4 or 5 years. He was an All-American. He actually visited NC State while I was recovering. I broke my back my junior year, and I wasn't taking any college visits. I wasn't really a highly touted recruit, so I wasn't doing a whole lot of recruiting all that summer in between my junior and senior year. And Jacob actually went on a visit there, and then when he got back, he was like, "Hey man, I think this is going to be a great place for you because they're kind of starting over. It's like a big school. It's something that I want. I wanted to go to a big school and away from Ohio." And the thing that really caught my attention was what Coach Popolizio wanted to do was kind of change the culture and bring in guys who were all in on wrestling. That they weren't going to college, the party. They weren't going to college for whatever. They weren't going to do that. Everyone was going to come in and work and be focused on wrestling. And that was really what I wanted, because just growing up, I never felt like at my school, at the school that I went to, that I didn't have the training partners or people who were serious enough for me to reach my potential. And I was really just trying to find somewhere that was going to take me as a lower level recruit, and that I could be around like-minded people.
Right. That is definitely important. So at your first season at NC State, you were basically the Wolfpack Swiss Army knife, wrestling 3 weight classes. How do you think that has kind of trained your mindset as you transition into BJJ and MMA itself?
It's so my freshman, I was recruited as a 141 pounder. I wrestled 38 and 45 my senior year, and I was pretty skinny. I was 6 foot tall, so I was pretty tall for that weight. And then I started hitting. I just got on a college weightlifting program and blew up. But then, so I was 170, and for whatever reason, I just felt like I was a 49 pounder, and it was just dumb. And I cut down. I didn't. It's not like they made me cut the weight or anything. I told them, "Hey, I think I can be a starter and qualify for nationals and threaten to be an All-American at 149 my freshman year." That was my goals at that point. And so I cut all the way down, and then after making the weight 10 times, I wasn't even the same person when I was making that weight. And so we just decided to move up, and then that's when the coaches just kind of decided to use me as a utility guy at that point, because I wasn't the best wrestler, but I was tough and I was mean, and I was a bad matchup just because of my style for certain people. So they throw me in dual meets where they thought that I matched up well. and I was behind some of the older guys and still trying to prove myself. So it was a good experience for me being kind of at the bottom of like the totem pole as far as like I wasn't like the definitive starter. So it was kind of good for my emotional intelligence, my ego, and stuff like that. Because ever since I started wrestling, I was always the guy. I was always the best guy on my wrestling team in high school and stuff. Since my first day walking in my freshman year, so it was a good experience for me. I liked it. I had to grow up pretty fast that first year in college with Pat.
Right. So since your college wrestling experience, you've transitioned into a highly touted BJJ competitor and a combat jiu-jitsu competitor, most notably competing at Eddie Bravo's Invitational. How do you think you were able to accomplish so much so fast transitioning from wrestling to jiu-jitsu?
So my wrestling, it was pretty funny. Like a lot of people, fans, wrestling media and stuff, they thought just because of my wrestling style, they thought I did jiu-jitsu before I even started doing jiu-jitsu. It's just I'm okay going to my back to scramble, to get takedowns. I let people shoot on me. I'm really, really good on top, really good on the ground, on bottom, and stuff like that. So people, and just because I roll around a lot, I feel like a lot of people thought I did jiu-jitsu years before I even did it. But then I started training with NC State alum Sean Spangler when he moved actually from Vegas to start his own jiu-jitsu gym in Raleigh. So I started doing that with him. And I like it. That's probably, I like jiu-jitsu a lot more than I like wrestling, to be honest. And it's just something I've taken to. And I've had really good coaches to kind of show me how to get good at it faster, especially with my my wrestling background already. So I don't know. It wasn't. It was a good transition. I thank my coaches for that, really, because they kind of, even though it was frustrating at first doing jiu-jitsu because it was completely new, and what they were asking me to do wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. It paid off. It's like they, for the first year, they didn't show me any submissions, no nothing. They showed me all positioning, like position before submission, stuff like that. And now it's really paying off for my MMA career. And then it's been kind of like my thing for jiu-jitsu tournaments and everything that I've done in jiu-jitsu.
Right. That's a very impressive transition that you've had. So going back to the Eddie Bravo Invitational, maybe the most recognizable and definitely most exciting jiu-jitsu tournament probably in the world. What was that experience like for you?
So that was cool because I got to go. I've only been doing jiu-jitsu for a year and a half, 2 years. I'm still a blue belt. Everyone kind of at the gym, all the gyms I train at make fun of me for being a blue belt because they say I'm a sandbagger, but I want to do it the right way and not just like get promoted just because I'm good. You know, it's a timeline, and I'm kind of following like the IBJJF timeline or whatever. But the Eddie Bravo invitation was really cool. I had people tagging me in it when he was asking for people to compete, and I shot him a message like, "Hey, I'd really like to be a part of this. I've wrestled. I've placed at IBJJF, Pan Am's, American Nationals runner-up, and like those are really, really tough tournaments, and those are the only jiu-jitsu tournaments I've done. I've had success right away. I'm training at Extreme Couture with a ton of UFC guys, and he hit me back up and wanted me a part of it. The experience was pretty cool. I wish I would have gotten to show what I'm actually capable of because up until that point, I had never trained, for that tournament, I never trained combat jiu-jitsu. Like, I was always just rolling jiu-jitsu. And I never had anyone that wanted, like, to add the slaps in, I guess.
Right.
And slapping and punching are two completely different things. And so the positions that you got to get into are different, and I didn't have any experience doing that. And then once the match started, I kind of got a little bit out of my, not out of my element, but I didn't execute what game plan I wanted to execute. I kind of got a little too slap happy, I guess.
Right. So going from high school wrestling to college wrestling, then to BJJ, then to combat jiu-jitsu, now MMA, which of those transitions for you has been the hardest?
So from just starting out, wrestling was probably the hardest, to be honest, because I wasn't a natural athlete. Like people at the gym, everywhere I train at now, they're kind of everyone's like, oh, you're a natural athlete, like you're just naturally like good, like you're strong, you're fast, you're athletic, you're quick, you're flexible or whatever. But when I first started wrestling, I wasn't very good. I was scrappy and tough and mean just because of my upbringing, but I wasn't very good at all. My first year, I was probably the worst kid on our team, and then after that year, I became good just because I worked harder than everyone else. But definitely, just starting out wrestling was the hardest. Transitioning to jiu-jitsu was probably second, just because of the submissions and stuff, and like you have to have a different mindset when you're training and rolling and competing in jiu-jitsu. Like I can't stand like I've completely changed my outlook on how I train and like how I roll and how I wrestle and stuff because of jiu-jitsu. It's like when people come to the gym and are like, my coach will be like, yeah, he's a wrestler, he wrestled at NC State. I always kind of like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not just a wrestler though. It's like I like jiu-jitsu a lot more. I feel like I roll more like a jiu-jitsu guy anyway. And but the transition to changing my mindset was pretty hard just because of the wrestling grind, go harder, doesn't necessarily work for jiu-jitsu when there's submissions. When someone's highly skilled, it doesn't matter how hard you're going.
Right. So you now train at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas under some of the most notable MMA coaches on the planet, including Randy Couture. How did you get connected with Extreme Couture?
So my first jiu-jitsu coach, Sean Spangler, he owns a gym in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Cary, North Carolina, and he lived out. So he wrestled for NC State. He then moved out to Las Vegas and started selling real estate. He started doing jiu-jitsu, and so he got his black belt under Robert Drysdale. And then he had two daughters out here, so then he moved them back to North Carolina because he didn't want to raise his daughters out there, and that was my freshman year of college, and that's when I met him. He spent all this time at Couture's. He trained a bunch of guys at Couture's for jiu-jitsu. He had a couple of MMA fights, but he's really, really well connected out here, and so when I started training jiu-jitsu with him, after I was done wrestling, I trained strictly in the gi 3 times a day for 6 months, and then after that, once we realized I needed a little bit more, he set it up and pretty much moved me out here, and all of his connections are kind of my connections now. He at first hooked me up with Robert Follis, so I was staying with Robert when I first moved out here, and now I've kind of also made my own connections, and I've met all the same people that he knows, and so it's been a super big blessing for me to, I'm kind of like, here in Las Vegas, everyone knows Spangler, and everyone respects him, and so now that everyone here kind of knows that I'm his guy, people go out of their way to, even if it's just to say hi or help me out or whatever. But Sean
awesome.
Spangler's the reason I came out here to Vegas, or else I probably would be somewhere else.
Right. Definitely important to have connections like that. Trying to, to kind of get fast-tracked into a good gym like that. So with Extreme Couture, it's basically Randy Couture's gym. What kind of role does he play in training on a daily basis, or do you guys see him very much?
So he's in the gym. A lot of times I always see him doing conditioning with our strength coach, Gil, and he'll come in on the wrestling days, or he'll come in on the grappling. Actually, he's been in on every day stuff, so he'll come and do wrestling, like teach wrestling. It's normally the Greco stuff he shows if it's wrestling, or the MMA grappling day, we'll do ground and pound stuff. Like, he'll come in every once in a while, but he's a lot of the people who are running the day-to-day stuff is the manager, Eric Nixick, and then the people who coached Randy, or were people who trained with Randy growing up. So like Dennis Davis, Eric Nixick, Robert before he passed away, a lot of other people I'm not mentioning, but we have a lot of high-level coaches at the gym. and we have to because we have a lot of high level fighters. We can't. There can't be just a couple coaches. There's several.
Right. So being a young guy out in Las Vegas, how do you kind of stay out of the hustle and bustle and stay focused on training all the time?
Honestly, and this is something I think about all the time. I don't know why I'm not someone that has ever wanted to drink alcohol or smoke pot or do drugs or go out. And it's like I don't really talk to, I don't want to say I'm an antisocial person because I can talk a lot. Like I like talking to people and stuff, but like when it comes to going out to the strip and partying and stuff, there's just something inside of me that tells me I shouldn't be doing that because I have a very specific set of goals and standards that I hold myself to, like a moral code. And I just have zero will to break that, I guess. And I don't know. And so, like, I work with a lot of kids and stuff at Couture's, and like I do a lot of privates, and I coach some of the kids. And I'm always trying to think about like how I'm the way I am, and I'm trying to instill that in other people because I feel like that's a lot of times is what holds a lot of people back. Is they don't have, and I don't want to call it discipline because it's not. It's just I just don't want to do it. Like I have. It's like for example, it's I know someone the other day who like slept in for 5 o'clock training because they were out playing poker the night before, and it's like, all right, so what are your goals? Like, do you want to go out and play poker and lose money, or do you want to come in and do you want to sleep all night and then be able to train all day? Like, what do you actually want?
Right.
And what I actually want is to be able to train full time, which I do. Fight, build my resume, and get to the top. And so, like, if it has nothing to do with that, I don't do it.
That's definitely impressive. Absolutely impressive. So I watched your promo about you joining Legacy and on Twitter, and you said that this is not what the guys in your division wanted to see. Do you see yourself running through the division for your entirety of your time there?
I see myself running through every division of every organization, to be completely honest. Right now, I'm a 1-0 pro, but I've been training for MMA specifically for about 4 or 5 years now. I started boxing a little bit and then doing jiu-jitsu 4 or 5 years ago when I was in college. When I was in college, Pat and the coaching staff was super, super supportive of me training MMA in the off season, and so that's what they did. They saw that that's like something that I can be very, very successful at post college because it's not. I'm not the type of person that was going to go and take a degree and go get a 9 to 5. It's just, and they saw that, or like I wasn't someone who probably wanted to go and try to win, do like an Olympic cycle or try to make a world team or whatever because I didn't like wrestling as much as I like MMA, and so they saw that, so they were super supportive about it. But I've been training for this for a long time, and I've also trained with some of the best guys in the world, and I know where I stack up against people, and so I'm pretty confident that in LFA I'm going to run through the division, and I think I'm not the only person that knows that because in the last 6 months we've been trying to get a fight, and I've had countless people turn me down. I've also I'm managed by Sucker Punch, and Brian Hamper, who's one of my managers, he said that he posted on my Twitter, not my Twitter, but my Instagram one time. He was like said that I'm the most ducked person they've ever had this early on in their career. Like everyone at the gym, my managers, my coaches, everyone's like very, very confused as to how a 1-0 guy keeps getting turned down by guys who are supposed to be like 4 or 5-0 guys, 6-0, 7-0. And I think it's just because I'm training at a gym that has a lot of high-level competitors. I think word gets around what I do in the gym. So I'm having a hard time finding an opponent right now.
I could probably take a guess why, seeing that you were able to wrestle at the NCAAs and also be invited to the EBI, which you're probably one of the only guys that I can think of that has ever been able to accomplish that. So it
probably is smart for a lot of those guys to probably duck you.
Yeah, but it's like, are you here to fight, or are you here to, like, I don't know, what are you really here to do? Like, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Right.
You gotta you're not going to go your whole career without fighting someone like me.
No, I agree with you.
There's also not a lot of people like me, to be completely honest, but you're going to have to fight one eventually.
Yeah, no,
So you might as well see where you stack up early, maybe, if you want to try to improve on those areas.
Right. So you said that you've had a tough time getting a fight. Do you guys think that you're going to have one lined up soon, or is there anything in the works at this time?
So I'm not 100% sure. So, like, we've been trying to find one, like, as soon as possible. I had a cut I had a cut on my face from wrestling with a green guy, and it was dumb, and I got cut pretty bad, and so that I wanted that to heal. And then we're looking at one of the cards in September. I know the September 7th card in Kansas already had 4 or 5 guys turn me down within the last couple weeks, so we're trying to see. I would like to have as much notice as I can, because I'm not a small guy. So, I make the weight just fine, but I'll fight. I'm always a week out from making weight, but obviously the more time I have, the better.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure we're looking for September, ideally, and I want to stay busy. Like I said, I've been here for a year, and I've been able to get 2 fights. I was lucky to get an amateur fight. Someone who just had no idea about anything fought me, and then I was lucky enough to fight a guy in my debut from a really good gym who had a bunch of wrestling credentials in high school, and he thought that he was gonna, and I guess is one of their better guys at the lab from what I've heard. So I think they were confident that me making my debut, they were going to be able to win, but I just ran through him, and so that doesn't help my case for another fight either.
Yeah, you'll probably be running through people throughout Legacy. What are your plans in MMA? Are you going to, what kind of contract do you have in Legacy? Are you there for, multiple fights? Or are you looking to maybe take the next step as soon as possible?
So I signed a multi-fight deal. It's a 4-fight deal with LFA. I did that with them is because I think that they're a promotion that is going to be able to keep me busy, and I'm going to be fighting on TV. Like, that's a huge, huge deal for me. Like, I don't want to go fight at this point because I don't think I'm going to be getting a lot of fights to build up like experience and stuff, because like there's only a select few people who are going to fight me. I want those fights that I do have to be seen on TV. And so it's like I'm a guy who, like a Chris Weidman or a Cody Garbrandt, who have 4, 5, 6, 7 fights getting signed to the UFC. I'm not going to be a guy who's 15-0 and fighting guys who are 11-11. I want to fight guys who are 4 or 5-0, and me be their only loss in their record at 4-0, and me be 4-0, and have people looking at me right away.
Yeah, I agree with you, and especially with your background, I don't think that that's out of possibility for you.
Yeah, and it's just my personality too. It's like I'm good in the gym, but I've always been better. I've always been a gamer. That's always kind of been like one of my strengths. No matter if I'm sick, tired, under the weather, whatever, I've always been able to compete no matter how I feel at the highest level under the biggest stages. And I think that's something I learned just from Pat in college, and then I was always put under a lot of stress, I guess, and so I've learned to deal with that. And I guess I wasn't always a natural gamer, but wrestling at NC State kind of turned me into one.
Right. Oh, so Max, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today. Guys, be looking out through Legacy Fighting Alliance. Max Roshkoff, he'll be a big name. Just wait for it. Thank you very much.
All right, again, we'd like to give a special thanks to Max, and Max actually hooked us up with another interview that you guys are going to be able to enjoy next week, so be sure to be listening for that, and a big, big thank you to Max Roshkoff for joining the kennel. So, guys, we're going to go ahead and get to the B. Reich, the Hot Take Detective. This is one of my favorite segments. So in case you guys don't know, I'm pretty sure the only reason B. Reich watches sports is so he can try to prove me wrong at different things. And this week, we're actually going to jump back into the time machine for a long-time argument that Brandon and I have had, probably since 2012. So this is a good debate that's stemming 6 years in the making. Now we have a show, and it's as good as time as any. The timing is right to bring this back up. So the way that this works is I will give Brandon a take, and he will decide whether or not my take is correct or not. And we'll get to the time machine take second, because I think that might take the longest. So we're going to go ahead and start it off hot with my first hot take. 33 straight years of top 20 football teams at the end of the season. A stretch of 30 of 39 seasons ranked in the top 10 in the country. Seven straight seasons now of not finishing in the top 20. They haven't had a stretch like this since 1962. Nebraska football and Scott Frost will jump back in and be a top 20 team this year.
Let's start off. Why do you think so?
Scott Frost is the man.
That's okay. I figured that was your reasoning, and I will give him that. Scott Frost is the man. He's had Nebraska's actually had back-to-back top 23 recruiting classes, which is pretty phenomenal. But then you look at all the things that's working against that. They had a 4-12 record last year. They have a new freshman quarterback going this year, and they have crossover games against Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. They really get a tough schedule in the gauntlet. They'll also have to play Wisconsin. You have Northwestern, who was ranked at the end of last year. You have Iowa, who's always tough. I think it's going to take a couple years. Maybe even next year they're in the top 20, but I just don't see it for this next season.
Okay, so you don't think Nebraska will be a top 20 team at the end of this season?
I do not.
Okay, so I guess I'm wrong in my take. But guys, I did not realize that Nebraska. I had always heard the stories of how good Nebraska football was. I knew that they were a really good team. But 33 straight years of top 20 football, that's unbelievable.
No, they used to be. I mean, I was listening to it when Ndamukong Suh actually was doing an interview with Barstool, and they were talking about like Wisconsin for some reason, and then Ndamukong Suh got all hurt, and he was like, "Well, we were the first red and white." Like, that's how Nebraska used to be. They used to be like how Wisconsin is now, but just every single year.
Yeah, that's really impressive. I think Scott Frost is going to bring him back to that. Okay, so my second hot take. This one's been 12 years in the making. Okay, so Eric Decker is now retired, and Brandon and I have debated this for a very long time, so this is as good as time as any to jump this back in. So Eric Decker, there for a while, whenever he was with Demaryius Thomas, a lot of people had said how Peyton Manning's 2 seasons of success was based on the fact that he had 2 number 1 wide receivers. In Eric Decker's career, not at any point in his career was he a true number 1 wide receiver.
Well, I mean, the way you say that question, yeah, you would have to kind of agree. But here's the reason that I think Eric Decker's skill set was good enough to be a number 1 receiver. Now, he only had 1 season as the guy, and that was the year that he got picked up by the Jets. Geno Smith was his quarterback. He had 960 yards in 15 games. Still finished as the 26th best receiver in yards while having Geno Smith. So that's that's the only data that we have to say that he wouldn't be the number 1 guy. I feel like if he even had like Ryan Fitzpatrick that year, he would have shown true number 1, talent. And during his 4-year prime, which I'm taking the 2 years with the Broncos and then his first 2 years with the Jets, he averaged 1,085 yards a season and over 10 touchdowns a season. So, I mean, he put up numbers. I think these people need to let's argue a little bit back and forth here. What else do you have for me?
Okay, so the reasons why I don't think Eric Decker was ever a true number 1 wide receiver. So we can talk about how basically the Jets even went out and paid him as a number 2 wide receiver behind Percy Harvin. So Percy Harvin was actually valued a little more from the Jets side of things. And then Percy Harvin finally leaves, and then they bring in B. Marsh, who B. Marsh signed a contract within a year of whenever Eric Decker signed his contract. The only difference was, I think it was both 5 years, but Brandon Marshall was making like 15 more million over that stretch, getting paid as a number one receiver. Then you have Emmanuel Sanders, who everybody would basically look at as like the prime example of a number two, who was a phenomenal number two behind Demaryius Thomas. So you compare their years in Denver. It had Decker had actually 2 prime years of Peyton, and he went for 172 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 25 touchdowns, where you look at Emmanuel Sanders, who had 1 year of good Peyton Manning. I wouldn't say it was phenomenal Peyton Manning, and then the second year was a mixture of Brian Osweiler and a terrible Peyton Manning. Emmanuel Sanders had more receptions with 187, more yards, 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. And, you know, you want to point to the fact that Eric Decker had the double-digit touchdowns and 1,000 yards with Peyton Manning. You know, I mean, Dallas Clark, never looked at as a number one wide receiver. He had 1,000 yards with Peyton Manning and 10 touchdowns in the same season. Brandon Stokely, 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in the same season. And Peyton Manning, you know, he was able to produce 2 guys who were looked at as number one wide receivers with their production. 8 of his 11 final seasons that he played, he produced 2 1,000-yard guys, and once he even produced 3 1,000-yard guys, and all 3 of them had 10-plus touchdowns. So I don't think Eric Decker, I think he had a good career. I think that he was like one of the best number 2 options in the NFL. But if you look at his career as a whole, even compared to guys in the year that he was drafted in 2010, he ranks 10th, or he ranks 8th on receiving yards of guys that were drafted in the 2010 class. He's only 600 yards against Brandon LaFell, who nobody in the world would value Brandon LaFell as a number 1 or a number 2.
Well, I think the whole yardage probably was due to some injury there. And he had a pretty short career, and he had a short prime. But how do you Ryan Fitzpatrick, his second year with the Jets, he had over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So, I mean, what are you gonna say about that?
I think that Eric Decker was he was good in the red zone, obviously 6'3", and he was strong and he was able to grab the ball. He was basically like a tight end playing the wide receiver position, but whenever you look at a wide receiver 1, in my opinion, and there's not that many of them in the NFL today. There's a lot of really good wide receivers, but as far as I am comfortable with this guy being number 1, I would say that there's a short list of probably 20 in the NFL today. A guy that I compare Eric Decker to a lot is actually Marvin Jones Jr. And you look at their career, and you point out the fact that Eric Decker was nicked up a little bit, and he never really had a huge injury history, but he had the season where he only played 3 games, and Marvin Jones Jr. had a season that was just like that, but he actually didn't play any games. The only difference between the two was that Marvin Jones Jr. catches a touchdown every 2.5 games. His touchdowns are still really inflated, and Eric Decker caught one every 2 games. And the yards per game is actually only separated by 2 yards. And Marvin Jones Jr., being a phenomenal number 2 option, is never going to be looked at as that number 1 wide receiver.
Well, I think the issue is that Marvin Jones Jr. has played fewer seasons than Eric Decker. So I think those stats are going to be a little bit changed. And you also have 2 seasons of Eric Decker that are, a little bit of a wash in my mind, with his 3 games that he played, which he got hurt in the 3rd game, and then he played with the Titans, who clearly he was not the same player. And as we see, he pretty much was going to get cut by the Patriots. He wasn't the same player anymore. But I would say during his 4 or 5 years there, he was definitely the number 1, and I would have felt comfortable as a GM putting him as my number 1 option out there. Because, I mean, you can look into that one season where he only had, the 960-something yards and 5 touchdowns. But I compare that. I'm not putting these guys in the same light career-wise, but you take DeAndre Hopkins, that one bad season that he had no quarterback play, and he had 954 yards and 4 touchdowns in 16 games. Sometimes quarterbacks really do work against people. And on top of that, I just want to point out that Eric Decker did play with 2 phenomenal wide receivers. And I'm in the camp that thinks that Eric Decker, during his 5 seasons, definitely was a top 1 wide receiver candidate if he had the option.
Yeah,
That's
but
where I stand.
I just don't see it because you look at Emmanuel Sanders, who is a very good number 2 option, and you throw in Trevor Siemian, who, in my opinion, Trevor Siemian's been one of the worst NFL quarterbacks I've seen to get extended, like an extended amount of playing time. And Emmanuel Sanders was even able to put up 1,000 yards with Trevor Siemian. So if a team's trailing a lot and they're throwing the ball, and they're not a winning football team, it's easy to pump out a 1,000-yard receiver.
I mean, that's definitely fair. And when you brought up the Emmanuel Sanders, I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty good argument because I could go against Marvin Jones, but Emmanuel Sanders is pretty solid. But I'm just saying, if you have a receiver that's Eric Decker's size, Eric Decker's skill set, can go up and get the ball in the red zone, can stretch the field, I just view him as a number 1. But you know what? He didn't get the. Basically, he had a shorter career than I thought he would, so I don't think we're ever going to agree on that one.
Yeah, he didn't have the fairy tale ending he thought he would have whenever you go sign with the Jets. But anybody who goes and signs with the Jets and expects that, they might be a little crazy.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you think I'm wrong with that one?
I still think you're wrong. I think we're looking at it a little bit different, lights, but I think you're wrong, yes.
Okay,
No.
did I move the needle for you at all?
The Emmanuel Sanders moved it a little bit, but I'm still thinking Eric Decker was a number 1 receiver if he had the right chance. What do you think, Layden?
No, he's definitely not number 1 receiver. He know he got guarded by the best guy. Know he got safety over the top. Just no. Nope.
I do think he was really
He
good.
did with the Jets. I mean, he did with the Jets, and he
was
should have.
good. He was
didn't
good.
have. If he had Ryan Fitzpatrick, the year that he was the number 1 guy, he probably had like 1,300 yards,
Brandon,
1,400 yards, maybe.
Brandon, you realize that teams probably just didn't put a safety over the top of him because they didn't have to, right? Teams don't just do that to the receiver. They don't do it when they have to do it.
I will say this, though, about Eric Decker. If I was building a team on, like a realistic team, obviously if you're going to pick 2 receivers, you're going to pick like Jerry Rice and like Randy Moss or something like that. If you're building a realistic team that, would be the best team of all time, Eric Decker would probably be your second option because he, in my opinion, is one of the best second options of all time at the prime of his career. But I just don't think that he was ever a number 1. That's why I think it would be a realistic possibility to have him as your number 2.
Okay.
So guys, we'll go ahead and we'll put a bow on our fantasy breakdowns for this season. We've broke down quarterbacks, we broke down your top 15 running backs, top 15 wide receivers, and top 10 tight ends. Today, we're going to break down your top 10 defenses. And defenses is one of those weird things because it's really hard to just say this team's going to have this many sacks, this team's going to have this many returns for a touchdown. We're going to put them in tiers. We're going to break them down into 3 separate tiers, and we're only going to do 10 because most fantasy leagues only have 10 teams, so you probably won't be rostering anything beyond this. And we'll break them down 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to go ahead and start off. Layton, give us your first tier for defenses of the 2018 fantasy football season.
Okay, Drake, before we get into this, you mentioned it. Don't take more than 1 defense in your fantasy league. That's stupid.
Absolutely not.
No.
But tier 1, only 1 team in it. That's Jacksonville Jaguars. I think tier 2 is for good defensive, but they're the safest bet. They're the only one I would take in the 11th round or later. So, Jacksonville Jaguar defense.
So I actually have 2 in my top tier. I'm going to go Jaguars, and I think we're all going to have the Jaguars in there. They're going to win you a couple weeks, probably. And then I have the Vikings, mainly because they were the top.
Right?
They were the top defense in actual defensive statistics last year. I just think that they're going to maybe cause some more turnovers, and I think those are the 2 to own in fantasy this season.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. My top tier, obviously the Jaguars. I mean, this is a defense that's absolutely loaded from the front to the back. And what did they do in the first round? They went out and got Taven Bryant. So all they did was just bolster that front 7, and they're going to be a nasty defense. Expect a ton of turnovers. Expect the defense to get you touchdowns. Last year, they would have been rostered as a wide receiver 2. If they would have been if you could take the Jaguars and put them into a wide receiver position, they would have been a wide receiver 2, scored as that, which is absolutely crazy. You never see defenses be able to flirt with being a skill position like that. And in the first tier, I actually had the Jaguars. So the Vikings in the top tier with the Jaguars. The Vikings were really, really weird as a defense last year. They were the number 1 defense again for points against. They only gave up 15.75 points against, and that was number 1 in the league. They were number 1 in total yards, number 1 in total yards per play, and passing touchdowns given up. So you look at that Jaguars, the secondary of the Jaguars, and you think that that's the best in football. Well, you could make an argument that the Vikings were better, and they added George Iocca from the Bengals, who they cut him, and he's been playing at a very high level. So you look at Harrison Smith and Iocca over the top of guys like Xavier Rhodes. This defense is going to be lighting people up. They only gave up 13 touchdowns through the air last year and 9 rushing touchdowns. The only stat that's more ridiculous than 25 touchdowns in a whole entire season given up is the fact that this defense only had 19 turnovers. So those numbers will have to go up. If they're a good defense again, which they really didn't lose anybody, so they're going to be a good defense again, they will not only have 19 turnovers. That is the biggest outlier of a stat. 25 touchdowns given up, 19 turnovers. That's just really bad luck, the ball going the opposite way, and I think that the Vikings are going to be a really good defense to own. So, Leighton, who do you have in that second-tier defense?
I didn't have them first tier, but the Vikings would be my next choice of defense if they did 1 through 10, the guys named. But the rest of tier 2 in alphabetical order are the Chargers, the Eagles, the Rams, and the Texans. The Texans are a team that, if everyone's defense can stay healthy, like Whitney Merciless, J.J. Watt, and they got Tyrann Mathieu, if they can all stay healthy, this defense could possibly be the best defense in football. Probably not better than the Jaguars, but I think they could easily be a top 2 or 3 defense in football if they all stay healthy.
Okay. I actually am going to go with a lot of the same teams. I don't have the Texans, but I am going to go with Rams, the Eagles, the Chargers, and I think I'm going to throw the Ravens in there as my next one. I really like the Chargers this year. I think that they really underperformed in fantasy last season. I think that they're going to be great. They got good edge rushers, and they have just too much talent not to repeat this year. And then the Ravens are just always there. Their last 3 seasons, top 7, and they've had the most interceptions back-to-back seasons. You would think that it would continue to be up there. So those are my next.
So my second tier, I'm going to start it off with the obvious, the Chargers. They're teetering on, that 1A category of defenses. 2 guys with 10-plus sacks from last year, Bosa and Ingram. The team only allowed over 30 points one time last year, and all they did was add Derwin James. They held opponents to 10 or less points 5 times last season, and I think they're going to repeat that. This is a very tough defense, young, and they're only going to get better. With the Rams, they were the number 4 defense last year. All they did was add Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, and Ndamukong Suh. Number 3, in that second tier as well, I have the Eagles. They were number 3 last year. I don't think they're going to be that high again. They really didn't lose anything, but they got Michael Bennett and Derek Barnett. He's just getting another year older, so he's going to be better. I think this defense is going to be good. I don't think they're going to be number 3 like they were last year, though. And that sums up my second tier. These are the 5 defenses that I would be extremely happy to own in fantasy. The third tier is kind of just teams that you're probably going to have to go week by week on. And Leighton, you go ahead and start us off with your third tier.
Yeah, dude, you pretty much nailed the whole third tier thing. Like if you get to this point, it's because you wait till around 14 to look at a defense. But I have 3 teams in it: the Ravens, the Panthers, and the Patriots. The Ravens and Panthers are always really good at stopping one form of offense. It's either the run or the pass, and a lot of times it changes throughout the years. And the Patriots, they're going to give a whole lot of yards, but not going to allow a whole lot of points, because that's what they always do. Eventually, see how good they are without Danica Patrick, though.
Danica Patrick?
Danica Patrick. That's not the guy's name. Dan Patricia.
That's a female Race car
Matt
driver.
Patricia. Wow.
Matt
Wait,
Patricia.
when-
Wow.
Was Danica Patrick was the defensive coordinator for? She wears many hats. Yeah, you
She's
know what?
really
I bet
talented.
she probably has Aaron Rodgers in the film room right now, just showing him different defensive schemes and how to beat those teams. I really like that though. That's a good football move by Aaron Rodgers to date the former defensive coordinator of the Patriots.
That is. Good job, Aaron.
Always thinking about football, Mr. Aaron Rodgers. B-Reich, who do you have in your third tier?
I got Saints right there. They were top 10 last year. Great secondary. Added a pass rusher with Davenport. I like what they're doing. And I have Panthers. They actually, fun fact, they only trailed the Jaguars as having more top 8-week performances. So they were really up and down last year. But like Layton said, they are usually a one-trick pony. And then I have the Bears, who I'm sure Drake's happy to hear. And then
I'm elated to hear that.
And then I have I know that they're back, but I also have Broncos. They finished 13th in fantasy last season. Their pass rush should improve with Chubb, and they were 13th in their offense. The Broncos' offense led I think it was tied with the Browns with the most interceptions thrown. So they were put in awful situations all year long. So I think the Broncos will bounce back. They still have a lot of talent, and they got Chubb with that pass rush. So
if you're tied for the lead league of anything with the Browns, you have to reevaluate your talent.
Right, and I guess Case Keenum will be the savior. So what do you got, Drake?
So my third tier, I'm going to start off with the Ravens. They were number 2 last year, but they're going to be a top 10 team this year. But the turnovers, in my opinion, were an outlier. I mean, this is a team that even forced more turnovers than the Jaguars. I don't see that repeating. And then I have the Bears. They forced double-digit turnovers in 7 of their 16 games and 3 or more turnovers in a quarter of their games. They're not going to be a team that you play every single week, but you could comfortably do that with the exception of whenever they have to play Rodgers twice, because this team did not get you any negative fantasy points last year, which is a pretty impressive stat for the Bears. And then the Broncos. I think losing Aqib Talib and gaining Nick Chubb actually makes this team better, just because teams now can't just basically say, hey, we're going to block one side of the line. Wherever Von Miller's at, we're just going to shut that down because Nick Chubb's going to be nipping at your heels if you do that. And then a team that I think is going to fly under the radar this year, and you guys really didn't talk about, I have the Tennessee Titans. I'm not going to be surprised if this team's a tier 2 team by the end of the season, and they may have the most talent in the league except for the Jaguars. You look at this team on the defense, top to bottom: Jarrell Casey, Kevin Byard, Adoree Jackson, Brian Orakpo, Wesley Woodyard. Then they picked up Malcolm Butler. And then in the draft, they actually went out and got Rashad Evans at the linebacker position to bolster that up, and Harold Landry, which a lot of people think was one of the best pass rushers in the draft this year. You look at a coach like Mike Vrabel, defensive-minded guy, and the offense really isn't going to put him in short fields. So Marcus Mariota, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's not going to, put, like you said with the Broncos last year. They were in very, very bad spots. This Titans team's not going to do it. I love this defense as a late steal. If you're sitting there in round 14, 15, and you think, oh, man, I haven't gotten a defense yet, and there's 7 of them gone, if the Titans are there, that's a team you better hop all over. And another team that may fly under the radar this year is the Arizona Cardinals. I talked about them earlier in the preseason breakdown. They have Patrick Peterson and Chandler Jones. That gives you an unstoppable force in the front 7 and the back half of your defense. Steve Wilkes has shown that he's a defensive-minded coach. I'm going to give you the stat I did earlier. 6 interceptions, 13 sacks in the preseason. I know it's just preseason football, but I think that's leaning towards a direction for the Cardinals that they're going to be heading this year. I think this defense is actually going to be pretty good, and I like them as a late-round steal. So, Leighton, you have the Texans. I like the Texans if they're healthy, but last year they worried me so much because just without J.J. Watt and Merciless, that defense was atrocious. They gave up the most points in the league last year, even more than the Browns.
Yeah, because the only guy that had with a shit pass rush was Jalen Clowney, who did 9.5 sacks. For you bring back Watt, you bring back a guy who averaged 17 sacks this season. Merciless was a huge sack guy, so the quarterback has less time in the pocket. We've seen what safeties can do for a football team in Seattle. Is Matthew as good as Chancellor or Thomas? No, but he is good, and he can pick up the slack for Corey Joseph and Kevin Johnson, who can't cover anybody. And
It really can't.
Yeah, Jonathan Joseph's career is tough, but Kevin Johnson can get better still. So I'm hoping to develop from him, and then just hopefully Matthew can fill the holes. And the pass rush is a big thing here, though. Okay, you don't have time to throw, you can't throw.
Yeah, that's true. I do love the pass rush. Those corners make me nervous, though. But Tyrann Mathieu, like you said, he's a great help for that defense. I'm interested to see if they're going to have him returning punts or not. Because if not, I feel like that. I mean, I think he's going to get you 6 points somewhere throughout the season with a punt return for a touchdown. So, guys, we'll go ahead and put a bow on our NFL divisions breakdown. Next week, we'll talk more in depth about, as a result of our rankings, how do we think things are going to pan out through the playoffs, and kind of give our preseason awards for guys. So we'll finish up the divisions, and we'll start with the NFC South. B-Reich, take us 1 through 4 of who you have in the NFC South.
Well, I think to start out, both of these divisions we're going to talk about are going to have a lot more parity than the other divisions we've talked about previously in the past shows. So I have actually the Saints on top, going 11, 5, 10, and 6. I think this team figured out the recipe to success, and Drew Brees is going to have another very efficient season. I have the Panthers going 10 and 6. I think McCaffrey will improve. You have Greg Olsen back. D is always solid, and Falcons at 9 and 7. I think all three of those teams, I think realistically could win this division. And then I have the Bucks trailing in the back with 6 and 10. They did have 7 losses in 1-score games, but with Winston being in flux and we don't really know what's going to happen with him, I'm still having them only 1 game better than last season.
Yeah, I also have the Saints winning division. How they're going to 2-4. That team right now is, in my opinion, I think it's definitely the hierarchy of this division. The Panthers and Falcons are both close to them, but that's good. I have them going 10 and 6, and the Buccaneers I have going 4 and 12. I have some close games. I see them going 6 and 10, but without Jameis for 3 games, not sure how good Jameis really is still. This is his last chance to show me, so I don't think you're gonna do it. Obviously, going 4 and 12.
So in the NFC South, B-Reich, you hit it perfect. This defense this division is going to have as much parity as any other division in football. With the Saints, I have the Saints winning this division, but I only have them going 10 and 6 and winning this division. Not because this division is bad, but just because you have to play each one of these teams twice. And you look last year at the beginning of the season, nobody thought that the Saints were going to be good. They kind of came out of nowhere. You looked at week 1 of the season, they kind of got blown out, and everybody kind of just went ahead and buried the Saints and didn't really take them that serious. But I think the Saints are a really good team. I mean, obviously, Sean Payton and Drew Brees, it's as good as a combination as you're going to get. 10 and 6, though, is a phenomenal job in this division. And I actually have them tied with the Falcons. The Falcons as well, going 10 and 6. It's just a good football team at this point. I don't think that we're going to see that team that was just blowing the doors off of everybody under Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. I think they're going to be good again. I think they're going to make their way back into the playoffs. But I think 10 and 6 is probably the max for the Falcons this year. And Matt Ryan, good quarterback, so I'm going to put them at their max. And then I have the Panthers at 9 and 7. A lot of wins in this division. This team basically goes as far as Cam Newton can take them. When Cam Newton's an MVP, they're a 15-1 football team. And whenever he's playing bad, they're getting blown out by the Bears in Chicago with the Bears not scoring an offensive point. So this team goes as far as Cam Newton goes. I think Cam Newton's going to have a good season. Not going to be like his MVP season. I think they're going to go 9 and 7. And then the Buccaneers. Buccaneers don't have Jameis Winston for the first 4 games. I think 6 wins for this team is a gift. I'm putting them at 4 and 12. I don't think they're going to win a game in that first 4 weeks. They built back up on the defense, but I just don't know how good this football team is, because last year we were talking about how this team, could potentially win their division. They fell flat on their face. Now without expectations, I feel like this team's even going to fall further. So this could possibly be the end of Jameis Winston as a Buccaneer. I don't know if it's going to be fair to do that, because I still think Jameis Winston is a good quarterback, but I think that they're going to put their foot down and say enough's enough. The off-field issues, and he's not winning games, which, as we know, winning cures all. So I think they're going to go 4 and 12, and this is the end of Jameis Winston as a Buccaneer. So Leighton, run us through the AFC South 1 through 4.
All right, in the AFC South, I have the Houston Texans. I talk about the offense, and I honestly picked them to come out of AFC this year to go to Super Bowl. Call that bowl prediction. Really want a prediction, though. But last season, before they started dropping like flies, this team was arguably a top 5 team in football. And I think they can beat the Super Bowl if they all stay healthy. 10-6, Jaguars. Blake Bortles sucks. That defense, Leonard Fournette's going to carry him. Leonard Fournette, we've seen him had injuries in the past. I hope they can't be this year. That's a big question for them. Speaking of health, the Colts are next. They're going 9-7. Andrew Luck, we saw you his third preseason game last night, or the other day, so we're going to see how he's healthy for the season. And the Titans have going 7-9. Like Jake talked about that defense, I expect Mayo to be better, but this division I think is really good. Probably the best division in football. Might be the most competitive division in football, not the best, but I'm going 7-9.
Yeah, I think this division was probably the worst last year, 1 through 4, and I think this is going to be a hugely improved and very competitive conference, like Leighton said. That being said, I have Jacksonville going 11-5, breakout team in 2017, have a little bit of a tougher schedule. Basically, Bortles just has to be mediocre, and then this team will get 11-5. I have Houston Texans going 10-6. Leighton has talked about them to death, but very talented team. I have actually Tennessee going 9-7. I just think that I like how this team is. I just don't think they're going to lose a lot of games. I don't think they're going to take the step forward necessary to do better than last year, but they got a couple impressive weapons. So I think they'll go 9-7. And then Colts, I have them going 7-9, but I could see the Colts, sneaking in the playoffs and a couple other teams falling. Basically, this team's only going to go as far as Andrew Luck goes, because other than that, their team is really awful, and it showed last year. Their defense is abysmal, but if Luck can, grind out the games by himself, this team could make a wild card, but I have them going 7-9.
So I'm going to go ahead and start off my division rankings. Just off of this simple question. Would you guys be surprised if any of these teams won this division?
I don't know about one, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of these teams win the playoffs. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see all these teams in the playoffs.
I would be surprised if
Yeah.
the Titans were better than. But if Titans finish top of the division, I would be surprised, yes.
See, I don't think so. With as much as they loaded up on defense, Marcus Mariota took them to the playoffs, even won a playoff game, and Marcus Mariota played terrible last season. And I don't see Marcus Mariota playing that bad again, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were winning the division. And then, like, with the Colts, Andrew Luck, if he came out man on fire like we'd seen in the past and just basically puts the team on his back and wins the division, it wouldn't surprise me. Jags defense wouldn't surprise me. Houston, offense and defense combined, it really wouldn't surprise me. I think this is going to be one of the more competitive divisions in football. So at the top of the division, though, I'm going to have to go with the Jaguars just because what I saw of the defense last year, and you couple that with Leonard Fournette being able to run the ball. A lot of their skill players were getting hurt last season. Hopefully that's not the same thing. I know we saw Marquise Lee go down, so that is an early season scare for them. But at least they did get DJ Chark in the offseason. I've been singing his praises since before the draft. I thought he was a first-round talent. Made it to the second round, got drafted by the team that I thought they would get drafted by in the first round with the Jaguars. So I have the Jaguars at 11-5, and then I have the Titans at 9-7. I think that the Titans could be a team that takes that next step forward and ends up being a powerhouse in the AFC. But it's one of those things that I got to see it first to believe it. And if Marcus Mariota takes that next step, that defense is going to be good enough, the run game is going to be good enough to basically bring it all together. And then at 8-8, I have the Texans. Last season, everybody was raving about Deshaun Watson, but basically what Deshaun Watson did is he came in and he won them every other game. And he was a little turnover happy. If he played the whole entire season, he was going to throw around 20 turnovers, or 20 interceptions with, you look at any other quarterback, people aren't going to be happy about all that. And he was throwing the ball around the yard, getting a bunch of yards and touchdowns. But a lot of that came in garbage time after the team was already down. Now, the defense will be better. They're not going to be the worst team in the league as far as points given up. So they will take a step forward there. But I think this will probably be an 8-8 football team. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me if everybody's healthy if they do sit atop of the division after Week 17. And then I have the Colts going 7-9. They were 4-12 last year. obviously Andrew Luck is at least 3 games of a difference between Jacoby Brissett. They could, like I said, be atop of this division. But if Andrew Luck plays okay, if he plays okay, they're going to be like a 6-10 team. If he plays good, about a 7-9 team. They're completely dismantled everywhere around other than T.Y. Hilton. I think T.Y. Hilton's really the only player I like on both sides of the ball for the Colts. So I think they're going to be 7-9. But Andrew Luck, he's done Andrew Luck things before, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won the division. This was probably the hardest conference to break, or the hardest division to break down, in my opinion.
I actually had the Titans and Colts flipped a couple times, so I agree with you. But do you think then with the Titans, I know you're basically saying it's on defense, but do you think like Corey Davis is taking that next step, or who do you think on that offense is going to take the next step? Give a little fantasy advice here.
So with Corey Davis, I think he will. I thought Corey Davis was the best receiver out of college last season, played at Western Michigan. I got to see him play really well against Wisconsin in their bowl game. And if you're playing well against Wisconsin defense, you shouldn't have a problem making that next step. The only thing that I think was holding him down a little bit, and you see it a lot with guys who come out of those, like a MAC conference or like a mid-tier conference, is it takes them a couple years to get accustomed to the NFL. You saw it with Antonio Brown. You're seeing it now with Corey Davis. Obviously, Antonio Brown wasn't as hyped coming out of college as Corey Davis, but ultimately he became the best wide receiver in football. I think Corey Davis is going to take a huge step. I think Dion Lewis is going to be a better fit for this team than what DeMarco Murray even was, because DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry were basically, hey, you do one drive, and then DeMarco Murray gets the other, flip-flopping. Now, Dion Lewis comes in. He knows the role. He's the guy to catch passes. He's kind of that scat back. And then you have Derrick Henry, who's just that big bruiser who's going to run downhill. So everybody kind of knows their role. Last year, I don't think they had that. I don't think Mariota and Corey Davis, obviously, they weren't firing on all cylinders. And I think another year in that system for Corey Davis is going to be, pay huge dividends to his success this year. And I actually like Corey Davis this year. I think he's going to be like a top 25 fantasy option, but Marcus Mariota has to take that next step forward in order for that to happen. So guys, this is our chance to put the producer in the spotlight. Every week, Leighton goes out and he grinds and he watches us a movie, and he will break that movie down for us, tell us a little bit about it, and then give it a review on a 3-dip scale. So, Leighton, what'd you see this weekend?
1 2 1 2 Pip's entertainment review. Sit on down for a movie to view.
Okay, so as you guys know, I've been bringing down the Hard Knocks episodes every week for the past couple of weeks. Real quick though, I did see a movie called Alpha, which is basically the story about how a dog became a dog. And 2 things about it. 1, the movie itself is not very good, but it's incredibly well made. Like, really well made. The gripe I have with it, the biggest gripe I have with it, is the fact that the entire movie is done in like a Indian language, like a foreign language. The movie was made and produced, anything about it was made in America. And that's the only language spoken in the entire movie. So, if that's the only language spoken in the whole movie, why not just have it in English? I'm all about really being authentic and stuff like that, but that to me just makes no sense to a whole thing in one language. Just make the language American.
So it's a book.
It's an incredibly well-made picture book. Fine. But no.
So it's like a pop-up book on steroids.
A pop-up book on steroids is how I would describe Alpha, yeah. I'm going to give it a 1.4 dips. It's not a very good movie. But
I think I'd give this negative dips, because if I go to watch a movie, I'm going to go watch a movie. I don't want to read subtitles the whole entire time.
Yeah.
Like, I understand if it's made overseas and it's a really good film and that's the only way you can watch it. But like you said, made in America, like if it's made in the United States and most of your viewers are, speak English, or, even if you want to go Spanish with that route, but to come up with a language that basically nobody who watches this film is going to be able to understand makes no sense.
Yeah, and I thought about The Revenant, because The Revenant had subtitles in it, because they're Indian, they spoke actual Indian language, but the primary language was English, so they couldn't just make them speak English. They would have been authentic.
Right.
This is the only good in the movie. Just make them speak English, and then everybody can just kind of know back in their mind that they're speaking Indian. But whatever, oh well. I make movies better than people make movies make. On to Hard Knocks. This is by far the best episode of the season so far. The episode gets 3 dips. I'll start off with that. They showed it's always a cold open of just like a far away overhead view of the Landry-Mitchell fight. We'll get more to later. So Baker looks really, really, really good in practice. He's throwing dimes. David Njoku, saw my draft order seen this episode. Brad Paisley was at camp, and there was a really awkward conversation between Brad Paisley and Baker Mayfield in the RV the quarterback sleep in. Then Brogan Robach and his girlfriend went to a butterfly garden type thing. Robach's girlfriend is a smoke show.
Ooh.
Quarterbacks get the girls, man.
With a name like Brogan, though, you would almost expect that.
4th string quarterback.
Well, it doesn't matter what string.
It does
you just
not
say
matter.
QB. You say NFL QB, and they flock.
It gives you a smoke show of a girlfriend. So then we get to the practice, and it's defense versus offense. And Greg Williams' defense keeps hitting Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Not hitting him, but just touching him. And Todd Haley really fucking hates that. Whole time he's on, good teams don't touch the quarterback, good teams don't do it, blah, 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 blah. Greg Williams, who might be my favorite person on the planet right now, just keeps yelling back at him, and it's pretty entertaining stuff to watch. I can't wait to see that dynamic during the regular season. And then they go 7-on-7 drills, and Terrence Mitchell and Jarvis Landry are just straight going at for the entirety of the 7-on-7 drill. And then finally, Terrence Mitchell trips him up, and, they don't have pads on, to stay up. Jarvis Landry gets up, throws the ball at the head of Terrence Williams. They get in a fight. Or Terrence Mitchell, they get in a fight, and it's broken up. But that's super awesome. You already heard me talk about how they could be a absolute train wreck this season if they aren't good. People are saying they are, and that could be the reason why. Then it goes into the office, and the Browns actually have a brown lab that walks around the office. That's the office dog. So
Why not?
If you have a place to work, and you want like dogs a whole lot like football, probably for Cleveland Browns, just have a dog walking around.
As long as you don't like winning, that's a good option.
Then we meet Bob Wiley, who became famous after this episode because his belly moves when he says "hut," and he's an amateur magician, and he drives a white Maserati. This guy,
That guy's a magician?
yes, he's at least 400 pounds. Drives a Maserati.
No, I've seen him. How does he fit?
Dude, I wish they showed. I really do. They just show it pulling up to the hotel, and then
I
he
feel like
gets
that's
out.
like an extra drill for the lineman. Like, he just stands on the side of his Maserati, and then they, basically come up like they're hitting the sled and just, force him into the Maserati.
So how did
speaking-
he get his job?
He'd go line coach. They're the best line in the league.
What's his do you know what he did in his past that made him deserve it? I mean, how did he get to 400 pounds and then the defensive coach?
I know how he had his job. Joe Thomas really liked him. That's why Joe Thomas stayed in Cleveland forever.
That's
That's
all
it.
I need to say.
But speaking of drills and Bob Wiley did not like stretching. I think it's a waste of time. Talked about how right before the storm beach of Normandy in World War II, do you think they stretched? No.
He has a point.
We won 2 world wars without stretching. Why start doing it now?
I love football guys, man.
Yeah,
They're
he
the
is
best.
by far the best.
Him, Jim Harbaugh,
Then
the guy from North Carolina.
Is he a big part of the Hard Knocks?
he's been in every episode. This is by far the biggest thing about him. I've always kind of wondered about him because
No. This is not the biggest thing about him. I've seen the guy. There's nothing bigger than just him himself.
this was the biggest episode about him anyway. And then they show him and they talked about him. And then Des Bryant came. Des Bryant looked super happy, walked around, talked to everybody. Even walked into the radio station room while they were doing a radio show and talked to them a little bit. So you watch this episode, you're thinking, oh shit, Des is signing here. They sat down with Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson gave his bullshit for the camera about how they're building something great here and how they need veteran leaders like Des Bryant. I feel like everything you heard about Des Bryant, how he's not a good leader. Then they had the game and nothing really exciting happened there. And then the episode ended with a montage of Josh Gordon doing workouts kind of preview for next week. So tomorrow night we're going to see Josh Gordon, so that'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Do we figure out what happens with Des at all, or they just
they said that he didn't sign that day.
just says he didn't sign?
Yep. But as we know now,
Very anticlimactic.
As we know now, they're offering him a $5 million deal that he declined. So
Oh, really? I didn't actually even know that. That's a bold move by Dez. That's a bold move.
Yeah. Bet on yourself, Dez. That'll go well.
You have no team to show off for, so that's just stupid.
So this last episode, how many dips you give it?
Oh, it's 3. Best episode of the season.
Best episode?
Yeah,
I think
by
I'm just
far.
gonna wait. Is there a way to like does this come out later that we can watch it after it's all been done? Like, can I just like
It's called HBO
HBO
Go.
to go.
HBO Go?
Yep. I'll give you
So I think I'm just
information.
gonna watch it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna watch it all in one day.
Yeah. No, it's addicting. I've watched the episode probably 2 or 3 times. Cause
Well, that's extreme.
Cause I watch it when it comes out, then I'm like going to bed, I'm like, shit, what I want to watch? Well, Hard Knocks. And then watch it on Sunday to make notes for it. So.
Very interesting. I'm going to wait till all the Hard Knocks are out, and then I'm going to catch back up because it does sound like it's really interesting. I want to dip into the mind of Hugh Jackson. So, guys, any bold predictions before we wrap this thing up?
Yes. The same amount of rookie quarterbacks will be starting week 1 as rookie running backs are going to get the majority share. So basically the same amount too.
For 2.
That is bold.
I just
Okay.
think 2 apiece.
This time next week, the Red Sox will be taking the spot of best team in baseball. Because weeks go by, because a lot happens in a week.
And my bold prediction, I think it's sitting right now. The Athletics are trailing the Astros 4-5 in the top of the 4th. I think that the Astros are going to, or I think the Athletics are going to sweep the Astros. And I also have a season-long football prediction. I think Adrian Peterson is going to get 1,000 yards this year.
All right.
Wow, that is bold. We asked for bold, you gave us bold.
I went bold. Anything else, guys?
Drake's at the top of the show. Well, one episode after this one will be on SoundCloud. For like our 2 SoundCloud listeners left, just go to Spotify. We'll post the links on social media and make it easy for you to find.
All right. And on that note, for Drake, for Leighton, and B-Rye, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.